Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's SPFBO time and today's review is for Askefise by Rebecca Schmid. Askefise by Rebecca Schmid is the first book in a prequel duology to a series called A Daughter's Ransom that she co-authored with her sister-in-law. My understanding is that this duology, titled Tales of Redemeré, serves as the origin story for the villain from the Daughter's Ransom series, with Askefise charting the rise and the forthcoming second book giving us the fall. In exploring the character of Tyron from the Daughter's Ransom series, Askefise, in the author's words, is the chance for this character to be the hero. As someone who hasn't read the other books, I can comfortably say that there's no prior knowledge of them required before picking up this one. I would suggest that there are probably Easter eggs for people who have read the other books, but any recognisable parts will serve to enhance the experience rather than detracting from the experience of those for whom Askefise is the first taste of this world. In terms of the book itself, Askefise has three main characters. It's written from the first person from two different points of view. Each chapter in the book is split into two, giving us first the point of view of Ryoa, and then moving on to give us Tyron's point of view. And then the third main character is Ryoa's sister, Tirza, who doesn't have her own point of view chapters. Ryoa and Tirza find an unconscious Tyron and decide to help him, and then the trio travel together for a while as they unknowingly set off on a path towards the same goal. I think this is a bit of a difficult one to say much about the plot without giving away spoilers, so I'll focus on just two main things, and I'll try to be a little bit vague as I do so to avoid giving too much away. In this world there's a race called the Mirandi, and they're kind of dual layered. On the one hand, and to all outward appearances, they keep to themselves and no one really tends to see them, but on the other hand, the Mirandi are puppet masters controlling the governments of this world. They send their agents out to facilitate change, and one of those operations takes place over the course of this book. Essentially, the aim is to pull off a bloodless coup, so they want to take out one leader and install their preferred candidate. But it's not just an assassination and replacement, it's a long con, specifically engineered for anonymity, so no one will ever know, or at least most people will never know, that their strings have been pulled and they've been dancing to someone else's tune. And I like how this plays out, because it's not necessarily a rare thing in fantasy, but most of the time when I do see things like this, it tends to be over quite quickly, whereas here it's more drawn out, allowing you to see all of the moving parts that go into the plan and to get a real feel for the politics at play. And I also like how this gradually increases the intensity of the operation, especially as you've got all of the other parts of the story carrying on alongside it. One of those other parts of the story, and the second main thing I said I would focus on, is the romance in the book. At first glance, I have to say that this felt like insta-love or maybe insta-lust, and it didn't really work for me at all. But as I read on, I did feel that it was actually quite well handled. It is a case of love or maybe lust at first sight as Tyron falls for one of the sisters, but the other sister picks up on this and warns him off. And because Tyron largely adheres to the warning, it doesn't become such a big thing, and that allows a romance to develop more organically as the story progresses. So I admit this did put me off Tyron a bit, because it seemed that he was hit on the head and then he came round and fell head over heels in love with the first person he saw, and it didn't really feel there was anything more to him. Over time though, we obviously get to see more from him, and that definitely helps. And even when we're in his point of view chapters and he's basically berating himself in his head for falling in love with someone so easily, it feels like it adds a little bit of depth to the character rather than just adding a bit of romance to the plot. So I did feel in the end that the characters were quite well done, despite those initial misgivings. The main three characters I thought were quite interesting, although I do admit that a lot of that is because of who they are and what they're trying to do, but there is also a decent supporting cast along for the ride with them. I also thought the world building was pretty good, despite it not really being a major part of the story. It's more about the characters and the plot than the actual world itself, but the world that's been created is definitely on show as well. I like how there are lots of little threads going on in the background that don't really seem to mean anything in terms of the overall story. You just hear about them in passing, but it's another little layer to the world building that shows you that there's more going on here than just the individual story that we're reading about. We do of course also have the fantastical elements in the story, with drogons and gifting and Karansurs for instance, giving us magic and giving us fantastical beasts as well. Drogons are fully human and fully dragon, and they're able to move at will between the two forms, which we do get to see, and we do also see the way that they are kind of looked upon by the rest of the world. And then gifting is the more traditional magic of the world, and again we see this several times throughout the book, so we can get a bit of an idea of some of the different uses that gifting has in this world. Now, as with pretty much any book, there were a couple of bits that didn't work quite so well for me here. One was my initial perception of Tyron, which I mentioned, and as I say, it did get turned around as the book progressed, although personally I would have preferred it without the instant part of the equation. The other main one for me was there were a couple of conveniences, I would say, that I didn't feel were explained away or tied up well enough. One of those was pretty much right at the start, where I felt it didn't make any sense for Ryoa and Tirza to help Tyron and to take him along with them, especially once I learned about the type of people that the sisters were. And obviously this was necessary for the overall story of the book, but it did feel very convenient at the time. All in all, it was an enjoyable book and a bit of a change of pace for me, and it's one that I would definitely recommend if you like your fantasy with a good mix of action, romance and political intrigue as well. So there you have my quick thoughts on Askefise by Rebecca Schmid. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read this one or if it's one that you're looking at picking up based on what you've heard here or elsewhere. I'll hopefully catch you in the next video sometime soon, but until then, as always, take care of yourselves, read some good books. Bye for now.